I stopped dead in my tracks right in the middle of the hall, the gentle clinking of champagne glasses fading into a distant buzz in my ears. My own sister, Jean, stood beaming at the very center of the large, elegant room. On her left stood Daniel, my Daniel, his arm wrapped around her waist with a natural ease, as if it had been there forever. She held her hand high for everyone to see, the beautiful diamond on her ring finger catching and flashing under the bright, dazzling lights. It was my diamond, the one he had given to me. Gasps and hushed whispers rippled through the startled guests, and my chest tightened so much that it was agonizing to even try and breathe. Just a couple of months ago, Daniel had kissed me goodbye on my cheek, promising he was working late on a new business proposal. We had been engaged and planning our future together for almost a full year, with our wedding scheduled for this coming fall. Now, he was standing right there with Jean, and the very same ring I once proudly wore was shining brilliantly on her hand instead. Jean caught my eye from across the room, and her lips curved into a tiny, cruel smirk that was completely chilling. It was a look that confirmed this wasn't some kind of terrible mistake. It was a meticulously planned betrayal, and they had executed it perfectly. My parents quickly rushed to Jean's side, hugging her tightly and avoiding my gaze, while Daniel refused to even look at me. Every single laugh, every cheer, and every camera flash felt like a sharp, painful knife being pressed against my skin, one after another. That was the exact moment I fully understood that my entire life had just been stolen away from me, and they all expected me to vanish and disappear quietly from their lives. The most painful part wasn't the public scene itself, with all of its gasps and whispers. It was the crushing realization that deep down in my heart, I had seen something like this coming all along. I remember the night Daniel claimed he had a last-minute late client meeting, and then, hours later, Jean showed up at my apartment. She was wearing Daniel's oversized hoodie and explained that she had borrowed it while helping him run a few errands. At the time, I foolishly told myself that I was just being paranoid. Sisters sometimes shared clothing, and it was perfectly normal for people to help with wedding plans. I tried to push all of the unease down deep inside of me and smiled through it, convincing myself everything was fine. Now, every single suspicious moment from the past several months came rushing back to my mind with perfect clarity. I recalled all the texts Jean would quickly hide when I walked into the room, the way Daniel would laugh louder at her jokes than he ever did at mine, and the late-night phone calls he would take in the hallway, speaking in hushed, secretive tones. And then there were all the subtle whispers from my friends, which I had chosen to ignore. Hannah, my very best friend since middle school, had once innocently asked me if I was sure Jean wasn't into him. I just laughed it off back then, telling myself that I couldn't possibly imagine my own sister doing something so awful. Yet here we all were now, in front of everyone we knew, with my complete and total humiliation being served on a silver tray for all to see. Jean slid her arm through Daniel's as the crowd of people clapped. My parents were clapping too, celebrating the moment with them. My heart sank as I finally realized that this wasn't just a terrible betrayal from Daniel alone. My entire family was complicit and had secretly been in on it the whole time. Before I could even try to slip away from the scene, my mother's hand gripped my arm with surprising strength. She smiled at me as if everything were perfectly normal, her long nails digging into my sensitive skin. "Jody," she whispered to me, her voice low and calm, "don't you dare make a scene. Just be happy for them. It's for the best of everyone. For the best." My own fiancé was now marrying my sister, and I was just supposed to stand there and clap along like I was some insignificant side character in my own life story. I quickly pulled my arm away from her, but she leaned in closer to me, her voice still quiet and firm. "You'll find someone else, you always do," she said, her words dismissive, as if I were just a little child who had lost a beloved toy. "Don't you dare embarrass the family. Embarrass the family," she said, as if I was the one who had done something terribly wrong. As if Jean hadn't just publicly gutted me and ruined my life in front of our entire community. Jean was now across the room, her head tilted toward Daniel as if she were whispering some kind of private secret to him. I could feel her eyes constantly flicking toward me, watching and waiting to see my reaction. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. When the party finally ended, I left without saying a single word of goodbye to anyone. My phone started buzzing relentlessly with messages, some from friends asking if I was okay, and others from distant relatives telling me that I should be mature about the whole situation. I simply turned it off, tossing it onto my car seat. That night, I lay in my bed staring blankly at the ceiling, my stomach feeling completely hollow and empty inside. I wasn't just profoundly hurt anymore. I was absolutely furious. And that fury had a way of sharpening itself into something else entirely, a fierce and unwavering resolve to get justice. 2 long days later, Daniel called me out of the blue, as if he had nothing to hide. His voice was incredibly casual, as if we hadn't been seriously engaged just weeks ago, planning our whole lives together. He wanted to meet for coffee and talk things over. Against my better judgment, I agreed, feeling a strange pull to hear what he had to say. We met at a little cafe near my old apartment. He didn't even bother with any small talk or pleasantries. "I'm in love with Jean," he said, his tone incredibly flat and emotionless, as if he were just announcing the daily weather forecast. I honestly didn't plan it this way. It just happened between us. I stared at him, my eyes searching, trying to find the man I had once planned to marry and spend my entire life with. All I saw was a stranger who had selfishly thrown away 5 years of my life as if they were nothing at all. He reached for my hand, but I immediately pulled it back, a sudden feeling of disgust washing over me. "I hope you can eventually be happy for us," he added, his voice still devoid of any real emotion. Happy? The word was so absurd, it was almost laughable. Before I could respond with a scathing retort, Jean suddenly appeared at the door. She quickly slid into the seat right beside him, resting her hand possessively on his arm. "I told him that you would understand everything," she said sweetly, her eyes glittering with undeniable triumph. I stood up without saying a word, dropped a $20 bill on the table, and walked out the door for good. Behind me, I heard Jean let out a tiny, triumphant giggle. It was the sound of a person who foolishly believed they had already won the ultimate prize. That night, I mindlessly opened Instagram on my phone, already feeling the inevitable pain. Jean had just posted a new photo of her and Daniel holding hands, with a smug caption that read, "Found my forever." My engagement ring, the one that had once belonged to me, sparkled brightly on her finger in every single shot. Comments started pouring in from friends and family. "So happy for you too. You're absolutely perfect together." No one, not a single person, even mentioned my existence. Hannah called me again. "You okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Apparently I'm fine," I said, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. Jean didn't just take Daniel from me. She rewrote the entire story, completely erasing my existence from it, as if I had never been part of their lives at all. My family, including my own parents, happily played along with her new version of the story. My mom and dad even liked her Instagram post, which was the final, devastating blow. Every time I refreshed the page, my humiliation and hurt grew to a new, unbearable level. I shut my phone off and sat in the dark stillness, my hands trembling uncontrollably. That was when the big shift began to happen inside me. The immense sadness didn't vanish completely, but it started to curl and morph into something sharper and more focused. It wasn't just a simple betrayal anymore. It was a calculated, deliberate act of cruelty, and they foolishly believed I was too broken and hurt to ever fight back. They didn't know me at all. They had completely underestimated my strength. I stopped going to all the family dinners and gatherings. Jean could play the perfect, happy bride without me being there as the awkward, uncomfortable reminder of their deceit. But avoiding them didn't mean I stopped hearing the gossip and whispers. At the grocery store one afternoon, I overheard 2 neighbors talking quietly. "Did you hear? Jody's sister is marrying her ex-poor girl. I bet she's just completely devastated." They weren't wrong, but I was finally starting to see something else entirely. This wasn't just about the heartbreak of a failed relationship. This was about my own dignity. It was about justice, and I was going to get it for myself. One night, sitting alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop and began digging through everything. Old messages, saved photos, bank transfers. I finally found a long series of receipts, dinners at fancy restaurants, expensive hotel stays, and huge flower bouquets, all charged to my account during the same months Daniel had claimed money was tight for us. I clearly remembered him asking to borrow a large amount from my savings for a business investment. That shady business investment, I discovered, turned out to be Jean's ridiculously expensive engagement ring. I carefully saved everything into a digital folder labeled Truth. I didn't know exactly what I would do with it all yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let their new perfect story end with me quietly disappearing into the background forever. 3 long months later, word got around town. Daniel and Jean had officially set their wedding date. It was to be 6 months after our breakup, which was a ridiculously short amount of time. The venue they had chosen, the very same place I had once toured and picked out for our wedding. The same exact grand ballroom, the same date I had suggested for us. I found out when Hannah sent me the link to their wedding registry, clearly disgusted. "This is absolutely disgusting," she texted, her anger palpable. They wanted fine china, cash donations, and even the exact espresso machine Daniel had once claimed was too expensive for us to buy together. But the part that made my hands shake with uncontrollable anger was the guest list they had created. My name wasn't on it anywhere. I knew most of their friends and family members. I had been a big part of their lives for almost 5 years. And now, I was completely erased from their guest list, as if I had never existed at all. That's when the idea began to fully form in my mind. Not a plan to completely ruin their wedding, but to make sure everyone knew the honest truth before they raised their glasses to toast their perfect love story. The official invitation to their wedding found me anyway. A cousin accidentally sent me a photo of it. Thick ivory paper with beautiful gold lettering. "Daniel Carter and Jean Miller invite you to celebrate their union." My chest tightened as I read it, but then something completely unexpected happened. I actually smiled a little. They foolishly thought that excluding me from the wedding meant they were safe from me and my story. But now I knew the exact time, the exact place, and the exact order of events that would unfold that day. I casually messaged my cousin, asking her about the seating plan for the reception. She sent it to me without a second thought, not suspecting a thing. My table, it was non-existent as I had suspected. That night, I opened the Truth folder on my laptop again. I imagined standing in that ballroom with a microphone in my hand, every single eye on me. I wouldn't scream in anger, and I wouldn't cry with hurt. I would just tell them the truth. And the brutal, honest truth I knew would be more than enough. From that night forward, the plan to expose them consumed me completely. I didn't just want to stop the wedding. That would make me look bitter and desperate. I wanted something cleaner, sharper, and more devastating. I wanted them to completely ruin themselves in front of all the people they had so skillfully fooled. The speeches would be my perfect moment to strike. Everyone would be seated, cell phone cameras would be rolling, and glasses would be raised. If I timed it just right, there would be no escaping the truth I was about to reveal. I called an old friend from college, Mark, who sometimes worked at the venue as a server. "Get me the schedule for the day," I told him firmly. He didn't even ask why I needed it. He had known me since college and could hear the raw determination in my voice. 2 days later, I had everything. The order of the speeches, the seating chart, and even the lighting cues. My spot would be just outside the main doors until I was finally ready to make my big entrance. I wasn't just going to show up to the wedding. I was going to completely own the entire room and everyone in it. Preparation for the big day became my daily ritual and obsession. I went through every single screenshot and every receipt I had collected. I carefully organized them all by date, so no one could question the precise timeline of their betrayal. Daniel's sickeningly sweet messages to me while he was helping Jean pack for her new apartment. Credit card charges for hotel stays during the months we were engaged. Bank withdrawals from my personal account that he had made. I printed everything out and slid it all into a small, elegant leather folder. On the cover, in bold, black letters, I wrote the single word, truth. Hannah came over one night and saw me sorting the papers on the table. "You're really going to do this, aren't you?" she said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and concern. "I'm not just going to do it," I told her with complete confidence. "I'm going to do it calmly, clearly, and in a way they will never, ever forget for the rest of their lives." The dress for the wedding was the next crucial step in my plan. I didn't want to look like I was trying to upstage the bride. That would make me easy to dismiss as a bitter, jealous ex. But I wanted to make a statement, and have a powerful presence. I found the perfect dress in a small boutique downtown. A sleek, elegant, floor-length gown in a deep crimson color. It was elegant, sophisticated, and impossible to ignore. When I stepped out of the fitting room, the shop owner clapped her hands together with glee. "You'll turn every single head in the room," she said with a huge smile. Good, I thought to myself. Let them all look at me. A week before the wedding, I rehearsed my speech in front of a very patient Hannah. "You sound a little too angry," she said after my first practice run-through. "I am angry," I told her honestly. "Yeah, but you want them to look bad, not you. Calm kills. Make it sound like you're just sharing a little story about them." I tried again, this time speaking with a softer, steadier voice. By the end, Hannah was grinning. "That's it. That's the real dagger. It's perfect." The night before the wedding, I barely got any sleep at all. I carefully laid out my dress, my matching shoes, and the precious truth folder on the chair beside my bed. I kept picturing Jean's face when I took the microphone. Would she laugh? Would she cry in embarrassment? Would she pretend she didn't care about my words? By the time the sun came up, my racing nerves had settled into something that felt like a powerful peace. I wasn't just crashing the wedding for revenge alone anymore. I was doing it so no one could ever erase me from the story again. I wanted their perfect fairy tale wedding to have a permanent footnote attached to it. This is how it really happened, and here's the proof. The wedding venue was already buzzing with energy and excitement when I arrived. Guests milled around in the courtyard, sipping champagne and making small talk. A few of them recognized me from our shared past. Their smiles froze instantly in midair, and hushed whispers followed me around like a dark, unpleasant perfume. I stayed in the lobby until the reception officially began. Mark, my trusty inside man, texted me updates from inside the ballroom. First course served cakes in place, best man speech up next. I quietly slipped into the very back of the ballroom as Daniel and Jean stepped onto the stage, ready to give their speeches. She was radiant, wearing a gown almost identical to the one I had once planned to wear for our big day. The best man's toast ended with loud laughter and hearty applause from the crowd. Jean then took the mic, ready to gush about their true love for each other. That was my exact cue. I walked forward, my heels clicking loudly against the polished marble floor. Conversations throughout the room stuttered into complete silence. Jean's self-satisfied smile faltered a little. Daniel's jaw tightened, his face turning pale. "Mind if I say a few words?" I asked, my voice calm and even. Before they could even try to answer, I turned to the captivated guests. "I think it's really important that you all know the full love story you're celebrating here today." I opened the truth folder and pulled out the first document. A printed screenshot of Daniel texting me, "Can't wait to see you tonight," dated just 3 weeks before he proposed to Jean. A low murmur of surprise and shock spread through the stunned crowd. Next, I held up the hotel receipts from the nights Daniel claimed he was helping Jean move. The dates on the receipts perfectly matched the messages where he told me he was too tired to meet me for dinner. Jean tried to laugh off the evidence, but her voice cracked with fear. Daniel quickly stepped toward me, but I held up my hand to stop him. "I'm not finished yet." Gasps followed every piece of evidence I revealed. I wasn't yelling or crying at all. I was completely calm, and my calmness was absolutely deafening to them all. I held up the final, damning document, a bank statement from my personal account. There was one very large withdrawal, followed by a purchase receipt for Jean's engagement ring. That, I said clearly, turning to the sea of guests, was money I'd been saving for our honeymoon. At least, the honeymoon Daniel and I were supposed to have together. The room went completely still and silent. Someone in the back dropped a fork, and the sound echoed through the ballroom. Jean's face drained of color as the truth hit her hard. Daniel grabbed the microphone from the stand, his voice panicking. "She's lying. She's just a bitter, jealous ex." I calmly handed the bank statement to the maid of honor who was sitting at the head table. "Check the dates, the amounts, and the receipts yourself," I told her. The murmurs from the crowd grew much louder now. Jean's father stood up slowly, his face hard and filled with rage. "Is this true, Daniel?" he asked. Daniel stammered, unable to form a coherent response. Jean tried to speak as well, but her voice broke into a small sob. The perfect little bubble they had so carefully built around themselves was finally popping, right here in front of everyone they had tried to impress and fool. I gently closed the folder, slid it under my arm, and stepped down from the stage with my head held high. As I began walking toward the big doors, I could feel dozens of eyes following me, not with pity for what they had done, but with something else entirely. Respect. Behind me, I heard Jean's voice rise sharply and desperately in a panic. Daniel's voice followed, defensive and loud. The band stopped playing the music. The room was no longer celebrating their union. It was filled with utter chaos. By the time I reached my car in the parking lot, my phone was already buzzing with notifications. Someone had secretly recorded my entire speech. The video clip was already on social media before I even got home to my apartment. Within an hour, it had over 10,000 views. Comments flooded in, one after another. She's a total legend. This is how you keep receipts and get revenge. I hope they're humiliated forever. For the very first time in months, I laughed without a single trace of bitterness or pain. The video went wildly viral overnight, appearing on every social media platform. News outlets began calling it the wedding speech that shook TikTok. Strangers from all over the world sent me messages, thanking me for showing that composure, and a cool head could be its own powerful revenge. I ignored all of Daniel's frantic voicemails. I blocked Jean's number and all her social media profiles. They had chosen to write their own story. I had simply made sure that the truth was a permanent part of it for all to see. 2 weeks later, a good friend told me that Daniel had been put on leave from his job. Apparently, one of his clients had seen the viral video and questioned his professional ethics and character. Jean had quickly deleted all of her social media accounts, trying to hide from the shame. I didn't feel even a little bit of sorrow for them. They had already taken enough from me. One peaceful afternoon, I got a letter in the mail from a woman I had never met before. "I saw your video," it read. "It gave me the courage I needed to leave my own cheating fiancé. You reminded me that keeping quiet only helps them, not you." I sat at my kitchen table, holding the letter with both hands as if it were something very fragile and precious. My life didn't magically become perfect after that day, but it did become mine again. I went back to school to finish the degree I had once put on hold for Daniel's career goals. I moved into a new, sunny apartment with lots of plants in every corner. Every now and then, a stranger would recognize me from the video. "You're that girl," they'd say, grinning widely. "Yes," I'd answer back with a huge smile. "I'm that girl." Months later, I was driving past the venue where everything had happened that day. Another wedding was in full swing, and happy music drifted through the open doors. For a brief moment, I thought about that day. The sharp sting, the burning rage, the way my voice never once shook when it mattered most. I realized my revenge hadn't been about crashing their wedding at all. It was about walking away from it all with my dignity, fully intact, while their perfect little story completely unraveled behind me. And that was the best wedding gift they would never, ever forget for the rest of their lives.